So currently we're back on the command line of our CentOS 7 host. At the moment we haven't put any restrictions in place for zone transfers, and of course we should. But for the moment we're not looking at the security side. That's going to be coming in the next module. So even without setting up the slave server from our CentOS 7 host, we're going to be able to use the dig command, so dig and AXFR is the option that we want to do a transfer. We want to transfer then example.com, and we can specify that we want to look up all of these records within the host 10.0.2.4. Remember, that's the host that I'm using for my master server. In your own environment, put the IP address that relates to your master server. So we can see then we get the records coming back. So it finishes off at the bottom. We've got the start of authority record. And remember, it's the start of authority record that contains the serial number. And as yet, I haven't incremented it from the initial value. As we scroll back up, we can start seeing all of the generated values that we used with the $generate directive, as well as then being able to see our TXT and common name records. Let's just clear this out. Now, of course, we don't want to manually do the dump every time. We want to store it on the server. So let's gain some administrative privileges. I'm going to move into the configuration directory, which is just /etc on the CentOS 7 host for bind. We can work just with the named.conf. I've tidied this up a little bit, so just removing some of the comments. So it's pretty standard at the moment. There's not huge amounts of information that we've got. Let me just go through and put now a new zone record. So we're going to have then zone, and we're going to call it example.com. Doesn't matter about the dot here, especially where we're using the $origin record. So this is just the tag that we're giving the zone. It's going to be an internet zone. Remember, that's pretty much all that we ever deal with. And then we're going to specify the zone details. And don't forget the semicolon when we're closing the brace bracket as well. We're going to put our type, and with this one it's going to be slave, whereas before we had used master when we're setting up the Ubuntu machine. We still need to store it in a file, so we've got to specify the location of the file. And I'm going to use it in relationship to the directory directive, and that's /file/named on CentOS. So I'm going to call it then slaves. So we're not starting with a /, so it's in relationship to the directory. And we're going to call it db.example. It doesn't require it, but I think it's a good idea to keep to the same name that we used before. Putting it in the slaves directory, we said in the slides, means that the named user in which the DNS server is running will be able to create it. Also, it tells us directly not to edit this file, that it's the copy from a master. We've got to specify where the masters are. So we use masters, and this is then multi-valued, even though we're only putting one in. Well, we're going to put then 10.0.2.4. And that's the IP address of the server that I'm using. Finish off that entry. Finish off then the masters line, and now we're done. So this has got then our example.com zone. Now we can see that we've made some changes now, as well as having the example.com. I've been a little bit sneaky and saved a little bit of typing and added in the PTR record. So we've got then the reverse lookup zone, the in-addr.arpa record. The syntax is all the same, just the zone name is different, and of course the file name is different, but the rest of the syntax is the same. So this server is going to be a slave to both our reverse lookup and forward lookup zones. So when we're ready, we can give this the big save. And then I'm just going to give this a complete restart of the service. And if I want to go through and take a look to see what has happened, if I go through and run a listing of /var/named and then slaves, we can see then that I've got the two database files. We could also go through and check our logs. If I go through and look in tail/var/log and messages, we haven't configured any specific logging options, so we'll be going via the syslog daemon. And then we can go through and see that we've done the zone transfer for the two zones. So one of the great things that we're seeing here is even though we're using an Ubuntu master DNS server and a CentOS slave DNS server, we have no problems in communicating between the two processes. And this is quite realistic. Of course, if you went on a Red Hat course, you'll be learning to do it with a master and slave Red Hat server. If you went on an Ubuntu course, you'll be learning how to do it with a master and slave Ubuntu server. But it is quite possible within your own organizations you are using a mix of servers, or you're having to synchronize with somebody else's bind server, and of course you have no control over the distribution that they are using. So it's a very realistic way to be able to see our configuration. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at how we can add in a name server record, because now we have two name servers and we can check the serial numbers to make sure that they are being replicated through as well as the changes.